Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another jam-packed daily market update. I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend. I think people are in suspense about how the week ahead of us is going to unfold. I'm going to kick things off, obviously, talking about what really plagued the headlines in regards to being a catalyst for further Bitcoin downside last week. We'll sort of refresh you on the whole MicroStrategy thing. Tom Lee from Fundstrat has a take on this, certainly in regards to Ethereum and how market makers potentially are looking to force liquidations or further liquidations. Talking about Tom Lee, Bitmine, we do have news that Thiel's Founders Fund has sold half of its Bitmine shares. Interestingly, also we've got news, seems a little bit depressing, but it will get better, guys, don't worry, that Arthur Hayes is dumping some of his crypto. And then we're going to talk about some of the fears concerning the stock market and it being in a bubble. And despite those, we have the likes of Druckenmiller and the infamous Buffett, who has a huge cash hoard, effectively aping into Google. And we'll talk about what the White House announced in relation to Google following this. We'll talk about the AI bubble and how it doesn't actually seem to be a bubble, in my opinion. We'll look at Google because, of course, this is one of the Mag 7s that's ultimately going to affect the S&P. And the S&P, if that goes down, crypto is likely going to follow as a beta of it. So the reason we look at the macro markets, the S&P 500, is because crypto is correlated to it. And if we think that's going to do well, which we do, based technically on the fact that we believe it's now in a new bull market, having had its bear market earlier this year, if that's going to do well, there's a good chance crypto will. And I think this throws out the 4-year cycle. Obviously, in the week ahead, as there's a lot of suspense towards it, you do have one of the largest stocks in the world, maybe third or fourth now. It was first at one point, NVIDIA. They're going to report their earnings, and I'll look at how the NVIDIA chart looks, how Q3 earnings have gone for other companies like Palantir, Meta, Microsoft, Netflix, Google, Amazon, Tesla, Apple, and the S&P 500 generally, and we'll look at their earnings over Q3 and how it's not a bad picture at all. In fact, I think there's definitely a correlation between positive earnings and the S&P 500. In fact, there's more positive than there is negative in regards to earnings. Yes, there are some negative, but this is still symptomatic of a bull market. So I honestly don't think the picture is such a bad one. Unfortunately, with crypto and certainly the altcoin space, volatility is just inherent. This is literally the reality of being an altcoin investor. And you can take that from somebody that's been through, this will be my third cycle, 2017, 2021, this current cycle that we're going through, which I think looks very different due to the kind of macroeconomic landscape, obviously from sort of 2020 onwards with everything that unfolded. Let's kick things off. Last week, there was a lot of, quite a bit of FUD, quite a bit of people accusing Saylor of selling his Bitcoin, which isn't the case. It doesn't make sense for a company that is reliant on Bitcoin's price to essentially negatively affect the price. And, if you think about it, them liquidating would be the opposite of what they're trying to do. And even though I'm not a fan of Saylor from his kind of toxic Bitcoin maximalism and his refusal to believe that there's anything that uses a DLT outside of Bitcoin that's worth anything, I'm rooting for him on this. And I think the whole crypto space should be, because he is going to, if there was to be an issue, which it seems like people almost want for whatever reason, maybe it's our nature as human beings, it would be detrimental for the entire cryptocurrency space as a whole, and it would set us back. But this really gripped the headlines. This is why BTC Nuked, for the first time ever, MicroStrategy have gone below 1 NAV, meaning that Saylor's BTC holdings are worth less than their total debt. Traders are front-running the death spiral of MicroStrategy and its eventual BTC force selling. Now, Bitcoin goes up. Ultimately, this becomes irrelevant. And this can happen very quickly. This is a take from Tom Lee, which I thought was interesting. To me, the weakness in crypto has all the signs, of a market maker or two with a major hole in their balance sheet, sharks circling to trigger a liquidation dumping of prices, BTC. Is this pain short-term? Yes. Does this change the ETH supercycle of Wall Street building on blockchain? No. P.S. This is not the time to use leverage. Don't get liquidated. And I honestly believe that the events that took place, the largest ever liquidation events that took place back a few Fridays ago now, was on purpose. Exchanges did a really bad job. They clearly had holes in their operations, and it caused really retail to lose $20 billion for no reason at all. All that will happen is that will happen. We're still sort of feeling the ripples of it now, and then the broader direction for the cryptocurrency market, which is on a clear adoption trajectory, will continue. And retail will be all the poorer. That would have been shaken off somewhat, which is why we don't promote leverage. We don't even give you exchange referrals, which we can make a lot of money on, by the way. There's a reason we don't do that, is because I have sought out some of the best technical analysis and traders I've ever met. And when it comes to leverage trading crypto, I can honestly say it's a tough game for them. And when you look at your average person that has a normal life, normal job, responsibilities, so on and so forth, and they try and trade crypto with leverage, it's just not beneficiary for us to even push people in that direction. Yet many do, and they make lots of money off it, and made lots of money. We've actually got some things slid across my desk in regards to individuals that have referral links. You can actually track just how much fees they've made. And if you look at what took place on Friday, a few Fridays ago when we had the largest liquidation ever event, it was a big payday for them. It says it all. I always feel like I'm getting gaslit in the cryptocurrency space. So talking about Tom Lee, Founders Funds, which is obviously Peter Thiel's infamous VC company, sold half its Bitmain shares and now holds 2.55 million shares per new SEC filing. I'll talk about some SEC filings in a second. Also, Arthur Hayes dumps more crypto. Arthur Hayes has sold $4.6 million, so relatively small, in crypto over the past 24 hours. This includes 780 ETH, 5 million ENA, 640 LDO, 1.63k Aave, which is a protocol to look into, certainly with real world assets coming about. DeFi is the real explosive moment, I think, for real world assets. 28k Uni and some ETH-Fi. Now, we could be doing this for a number of reasons. He's obviously very bullish on crypto. He could be looking to fund something else. We don't have all the ins and outs, but people are obviously jumping to conclusions very quickly. So to summarize all of that, we'll see how the MicroStrategy situation plays out. It is a catalyst. It is a potential issue. But if Bitcoin's price goes up, they instantly become, positive again as far as a NAV. There's no issues here, in my opinion. This is just part and parcel. It's a big bet. It always has been. It's worked for them thus far. I think it's going to continue to work. I ultimately think Bitcoin continues to go up. And we'll talk about that now in the context of with the broader markets, not to mention all the things that we have internally for Bitcoin, the technical targets, BTC DOM coming down. Obviously, we'd like for that to happen, not on the context of MicroStrategy blows up and Bitcoin plummets, but altcoins just don't have the liquidity to quite follow. So they actually overperform it. We'd like actually the traditional BTC DOM down cycle to play out, which we think is going to happen. So we'll see how all that unfolds. This week is going to be telling, and this was an article from the block that I want to start with. It says, the everything bubble, GPUs are starting to go dark, even as data centers spending doubles. Is the bubble on the horizon? A pin line is waiting for every bubble. This is obviously a quote from Buffett. And it's essentially talking about how the infrastructure has now been outpaced by the construction of facilities. Christine Harman at the CBRE. There's no use to having the facilities if you don't have the power pools to service it. There's a Bitcoin mining. I own a Bitcoin miner one in particular. If you become a Patreon, you'll unlock it. That I think does well, not just off this, but also Bitcoin, in regards to them actually becoming AI infrastructure, which they all seem to be pivoting towards. Now, despite all these fears, uncertainty right now, there's a filing that recently came out, and Druckenmiller, who's an absolute legend when it comes to investing, has very close ties with Scott Bessent and Buffett. Everyone knows, add Google to their holdings in the last quarter. Google is gaining ground on OpenAI, and it's much cheaper and is the Waymo and YouTube and apps people use daily. I prefer Meta over Google on the margin, but both should do well over the next 12 months. And I believe, obviously, you've got ChatGPT and Gemini. I believe this is going to be the case. And actually, after this, we see the Trump effect. Google is investing $50 million in Texas AI infrastructure, creating thousands of American jobs, training college students and apprentices, and boosting affordable energy statewide. America first in delivering big win. And this is the kind of funding that you're getting in regards to AI. And I think it's going to cause a major economic boom. I think this is really carrying the stock market at the moment. I don't think this stops. I think you're seeing the funding actually continue, and this funding is $400 billion into CapEx this year. That's 4x higher than 2020. And I think this only accelerates, personally. And that's going to continue to grow markets, and certainly Stan Druckenmiller. And of course, Warren Buffett seemed to think so. Which, Google, one of the largest stocks in the S&P 500, we're expecting good things for the S&P 500. We think the AI narrative is one. I also do think we're seeing a bit of rotation out of bigger caps into smaller, which is, I think, more bullish than bearish. So the reason that we're looking at all this is because this is perhaps a fundamental driver for the S&P 500, which of course is very correlated to BTC, of course. We'll put this on auto so that you can see this. You can see this is a monthly time frame, which doesn't really do it justice. If you look at a weekly time frame, S&P 500 BTC, these move in step, literally. And if we're expecting, even recently, the S&P to continue and progress higher, which we are, Bitcoin does well, and I'll talk to you at the end just about the technical reason that we expect this to be the case. So a lot of very interesting things going on. Google doesn't look too badly to me. It had a bit of a surge. Yeah, you're always going to have pullbacks. I think this is just a pullback in a broader trend. Also on this is trailing 12-month revenue. If you look at Amazon, obviously doing extremely well. Apple then follows, but Google really seems to be, or Alphabet really seems to be catching up, and then you've got Microsoft, which both seem to be doing well and on upward trajectories. This week, which is definitely going to play into the markets, you do have NVIDIA report earnings next week. How big of a blowout will it be? And these are some stats. NVIDIA has beaten Wall Street earning estimates 90% of the time over the past 5 years, but averages only 6.5 beat in the last 4 quarters. NVIDIA expects no revenue from H20 chip sales to China in Q3 due to ongoing export restrictions on advanced AI chip sales. Wall Street forecasts 54.83 billion in Q3 for NVIDIA, representing a 56 year-over-year growth driven by data center demand. If you're thinking about retiring or knowing someone who is, there are 3 quick whatever. And this is NVIDIA, and I think ultimately this saga continues. This has been a great chart for us thus far, and we think that is ultimately going to continue. And if you look at how Q3 revenues have gone so far, Palantir up 63%, AMD up 36%, Meta up 26%, Microsoft up 18%, Netflix 17%, Google 16%, Amazon 13%, Tesla 12%, Apple 8%, S&P 500 generally up 6%. And the reason I'm showing all this is because the macro backdrop really is not a bad one despite all the fears. I think in crypto, they're inherent because of the volatility. It's scary watching your portfolio do. I mean, if I tell you how much money since the start of, Bitcoin topped out at whatever, 20, I think ultimately it's topped out, but its local high was what, 120 something K, 28, 27K to where we are now. If you look at where I was last November for my alts compared to now, yeah, the portfolio is down, but it's still up from when we've been largely accumulating. And ultimately, we still think that big next leg is ahead of us. This is S&P 500 operating profit margin, 13%. S&P 500 operating profit margin expands to 13.4% in Q3, their second highest level on record. And you're bearish? And this is all relevant in relation to Bitcoin, which we're going to come on to in just a second. S&P 500 index prices versus S&P 500 earnings. Look at this. 125 years of market history tells a simple story. Stocks and earnings move together with a 98% correlation. The short run is all about noise. The long run is all about profits. Speculation chase noise. Investors follow profits. There is maybe an overvaluation. They trade at earnings, but I think that's due to them becoming kind of Bitcoin vessels. So this is all, I think, very bullish and telling. This is all recent data, and we ultimately are expecting the S&P 500 to continue higher. We think you've had your bear market, which is defined as a 20% plus pullback, caused on Trump's tariffs. Every time you've engulfed that and gone on to put in a new high, retracing the entire pullback, you've actually gone on for a period, the shortest being nearly 400 days, going all the way back to 1980. This time is not different. And why is this relevant? Well, we just showed you Bitcoin's correlation. Bitcoin moves with the S&P 500. It's very obvious. And we're expecting great things for the S&P 500 moving forwards. And this week's going to be telling for the NVIDIA earnings. We'll keep you up to date on the MicroStrategy stuff, of course. I can't help but feel like people are very much like sharks in the water. Whenever they hear any kind of negativity, they love to amplify it. And I think it's because human nature is to not want others to win, and actually to want to see others not do as well as them. Maybe that's human nature. And I think that's why you get this kind of negative spiral in regards to information on X and all these other platforms and people throwing. I mean, I've seen even people I respect just acting like children when it comes to X, throwing shade at one another. It just is embarrassing, quite frankly. You know, you should keep calm and composed, I think, at all times, certainly as somebody who people listen to. And that's what we try and do here on the channel. So everything is going to be A-okay, guys. We'll see. We are looking at a number of falling wedges that we did highlight to you guys. We'll see how they play out. This week's going to be telling, I think. We really need to see strength come in. You know, we looked at one for ETH, which you can't see because my big head's in the way. Obviously, we looked at one for BTC, which we got here. We'll see. That strength needs to come in. It needs to not fall out the bottom side of this. I think what's going to happen with traditional markets is going to be telling. Of course, they closed slightly down last week, but the broader trajectory and underlying fundamentals for them is strong, and I believe set to continue. We're set to march on in this market, and crypto will be dragged up by it, and then it's going to have its own sort of fundamental narrative going along with it, providing MicroStrategy doesn't implode, which I don't think it will. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I'll see you all in the next.